I'm Kate Burton, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Damian and Anne.
Yellow is my favorite color.
Is it really? Yes. Oh, I know that to be true. I know that to be true because you grew up loving any woman that you called having yellow hair. And I thought it was funny that you thought blondes had yellow hair.
Yeah. My mom historically has been a yellowhead, so. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You Might Know Her From.
With Damian and Anne.
And it is Damian, Damian, yellow loving Damian.
It is Anne. I don't think I have a favorite color. But I remember during quarantine, we did like a fundraiser for Christian Richardson Johnson in Harlem. And it was like a paint and talk about the issues at hand. And I was trying to like mix colors to make like orange. And I really couldn't get it great. Like I could not figure out how to fucking paint to save my life.
I like really messed that color. It was like mix these two colors to get like a light brown. And I made like black and then gray. And then it was just like really ugly.
It was surprisingly bad.
So I've really wanted to tell you something that I've been reading this book recently about, it's really strange, but I've been reading this book about birth order. I don't know why, but I have been really,
oh my God.
I've been really fascinated by birth order and like thinking about it a lot lately. And so I was like, let me read about it. So I started reading a book about it. And one of the things that made me laugh out loud while I was laying in bed the other night was talking about the 1992 presidential election. And it said how Bill Clinton is the quintessential oldest child, and that George Bush is like the quintessential middle child, and that Ross Perot is the quintessential youngest child. And I laughed because I, as a kid, for who knows what reason, loved Ross Perot. And I remembered that you also did, and that also we are both youngest children.
Oh, that is sick and fascinating. Okay, you're going to read me an excerpt right now?
No, well, it said like Perot was the last born, was an outrageous baby, and then some hard-hitting, outspoken, asking lots of embarrassing questions of his opponents and often having the audience in stitches. And I was like, oh yeah, I loved him. And then the next paragraph goes on to say that it lists like a million people that are youngest children, and I think it's relevant to the podcast because it's Eddie Murphy, Martin Short, Ellen, Whoopi, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, Billy Crystal, Steve Martin, Jim Carrey, Drew Carey. Not enough women on this list, but
I was about to say I could do without Drew Carey on that list.
Did I say Drew Carey? I thought I skipped over him. Yeah, it's like so many entertainers are youngest children, and I was like, oh, it's so sad because like we're all like working for the attention of our parents who are tired and trying to differentiate yourself from your sibling.
My parents were very indulgent of me. I think that's because my siblings were older, like 6 years and then 11 years older. So they were out of the house. So maybe they were like charmed by my insanity at a certain point. But like I was way too old to be like doing lip syncs with my friends for like their dinner parties. And they'd be like, put on the Spice Girls. We're like 13. It's like we're too old. It's not like we're 7 and it's so cute. It's like we are all premenstrual or menstruating and like I'm wearing a sports bra. It's not cute when a teenager is doing that at a dinner party.
I'm charmed by you being 13 and being like we were old, and like I was making movies and like at like 17 being like, hi dad, me and like so my high school best friends like me, Sarah, Claire, and Alex, the Dask Art Collective, are making our first movie, The Antelope Slayer, and we need you to play the chief at the end. And my dad was like, cool, I'm gonna lay on the sofa, and like I like zoomed in on his face and was like, dad, say case closed. And he did it, but also I was like 17. And I remember one time my parents were like, I like you guys, like my dad was like, I like you guys because you act like kids. Like you're not trying to be older than you are. And I remember at the time thinking it was like kind. I actually think it's kind still, but it's like a nice way of thinking about what it was, what we were doing, because what we were doing. And like it went on, like probably into college. We were probably like, hey, we're home for summer break. You want to make an indie?
I mean, you're making movies. I'm like doing lip syncs and like skits in the basement.
Making a movie is relative to, like...
That's fair.
But yes,
oh my God, I just had a flashback. My friends and I, we also had a camcorder that I took control of in my teenage years. And my friends, I think it was Martha, Sarah, Angie, and I on the trampoline filmed a parody of Titanic that we called Titanic. And I don't know what it was, but it was like a lot of like me flashing the camera, but like I had a bra on, but it was just like that was, I think, outrageous to me at the time. And then just like faking a lot of like dry humping and things. Like it wasn't porn and it wasn't weird and sick. It was just like, you know, like hip thrusts were a big thing that were like, yeah, that's fucking cool and transgressive or sexual, but like not really sexual at all.
Yeah, I also used to make short films with, how do I talk about this in a way that's delicate? With a guy in high school. And
Sure.
we would also like, it was always like long form improv. You know, he made me feel so funny. And so like I was it was like me doing like method acting at 15 in his basement, being like being a character and him being like, you're so good. And then like it always got weirdly like homoerotic. And I was like, we definitely want to be kissing right now. We didn't, or maybe, no, but like it was definitely weird. But yes, it was like always trying to be like provocative and be like,
Totally.
you know, like pretending to be smoking cigarettes, but like not really doing the thing.
Yeah. And also, like, I remember, I don't know what kids do anymore for projects at school, but it was like, I always wanted to do the artistic project. Like, if it was an English project or a science project, I would always be like, let's make a video, because teachers were very impressed by videos at that point. So you could basically like half read the book, although I did always read it. But I remember we did The Scarlet Letter in 11th grade, and I did this like video movie version where like I played Pearl, and it was so stupid. I mean, it was like literally a really bad Mad TV sketch, and I really just wowed my teacher. And I feel like if you do a video, you get an A. I don't know if that's still true. That was like literally 21 years ago. But to me, that's how you get an A. You just impress people by doing something that they can't do, which is like write a song and record it, put it on YouTube. Your teachers don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can remember doing an English project, and I was like, you can write a paper or you can do an artistic interpretation. And I was like, great, here's a song about Tale of Two Cities to the tune of Just Bust a Move. And it was like Madame Defarge, big as a barge, or something. That was
my dream role, Madame Defarge.
Of course.
That was her knitting in the corner, motherfucking shit list. I was obsessed with Madame Defarge as a kid.
I'm going on the record to say that I'm going to search Madame Defarge on IMDB and also just like in Google and see all of the women who've played her in different interpretations, and then they're all welcome on the show.
Any Defarge at any time.
Wasn't there a Tale of Two Cities musical on Broadway like in the last 15 years, 20 years?
Yes. I think Aaron Glick gave me like a bootleg CD of that, bless him. But yeah, I think that that's accurate. I feel like in acting school, we had to like give ourselves a type, and you had to like find what actor or actress like was the person that you would try to model your career after. Honestly, if I had thought about Madame Defarge and whoever played her in every iteration, that probably would have given me a lot of direction in acting school.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, she was my favorite, so obviously she got all the shout outs in Just Bust a Move by Damian Bellino. I like put on like a karaoke CD and like stood in front of the class and performed it and was like, and then I also like I felt confident, I think, which is also
same.
like confident enough to do
yes.
that. And like also, you know, like in classes, you always sort of like click off with people that you're not necessarily friends with. So I remember like in that particular English class, like I was friends with like quote unquote cool people because like, I don't know, I would like read aloud and like do work and like I would make fun of people. So they thought that was, I don't want to talk about this.
Right. We were both closeted children that were trying to exert our status over other people to sublimate our own sadness and closetedness.
But I just felt confident like enough to do that karaoke like song. Like that's embarrassing that I was like, Madame Defarge, big as a barge. You want it. You got it. Like what? I can't even sing. It's so embarrassing. And then I was like calling people. I was like, you're a fucking loser.
What right did we have? It's so bad. Kids are terrible.
So I was, you know, and
kids
then
are terrible.
Yeah. I can remember taking improv as a fake adult in New York City, and some coach being like, "Why are you always have to play a high status?" And I felt like it was like being in therapy and being like someone being like, "Why are you mean?" and being like, "Because I don't know myself."
Oh my God, that person saw right through you.
Like, why are you always high status? And I was like, because I could never be low status. I have to start every scene being mean to the other person. That way I look cool and funny. Okay, I have tears that they're of laughter, but I think also probably the sadness of that 17-year-old singing Just Bust a Move in Miss Long's class.
We're really revealing ourselves today.
All of this is to say that we were little goblin youngest children, but
awful.
Not showbiz kids.
Absolutely not. But this week's guest, woo, what a doozy. Motherfuckers. We have I mean, honestly, Hollywood theatrical royalty with us.
Absolutely.
Kate Burton is here. We had been, I think Damian said this last week, but it has been the theme of season 3. We've been long in pursuit of Kate Burton. She was actually in New York 2 years ago.
She was doing Shakespeare in the Park the summer that the world was open. So I guess summer of 2019.
Right. And we had almost been able to make it happen, but it didn't quite work because of rehearsals. So we were finally able to lock her down. And honestly, I don't know if it's because of her showbiz roots, if it's because she's grown up in the theater and working since she was a teenager, essentially. She's so smart, so savvy, so funny, a great storyteller. So the whole interview was just sort of like butter. She really has great perspective about sort of the privileges that she was given, but also the hard work that she's put in and how it all sort of comes together to form this incredible career that is like TV, theater, musicals, all the things that we love. Just a well-rounded woman. We can't wait for you to hear it.
You might know her from Grey's Anatomy,
Scandal,
Big Trouble in Little China,
Veep,
Hedda Gabler,
and The Elephant Man.
I know we've been saying it a lot lately, but we have been in long pursuit of the woman in front of our faces. We are so excited to be here with actress of stage and screen, Kate Burton. Kate Burton, thanks for coming on the show.
You're so welcome. What a treat.
Okay, so Kate, we're going to get right into it. You are a celebrated actress and a woman of the theater. You're a 3-time Tony nominee with 14 Broadway shows under your belt. You're an Emmy winner and the daughter of actors and Hollywood royalty at that. But a big sector of this world is most familiar with your work from the soapy Shonda Rhimes dramas, Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. Mm-hmm. So you came into these shows as an established working actor, but what kind of doors have these roles opened for your careers? And what is it like to sort of achieve this network TV zeitgeisty fame?
Such a good question. No, I mean, basically, it's the thing about an acting career, which is something that it took me a very long time to decide that was what I was going to do. Because when I was in college, I was like, oh God, no. I think that what happens is, you build up a body of work. You do, I did all kinds of things, through my first 22 years before I met Shonda Rhimes. So, then you do something one day my agent calls and says, there's this new show. It's called Surgeons. The character is a guest star on the pilot, but you'll be the heavy recurring character. And she's the mother of the leading lady who's an intern. And here's the kicker. She has early onset Alzheimer's. So, I mean, I thought I'm 46 years old and I thought, oh God, oh dear God. I mean, I was 10 minutes ago, I was, Hedda Gabler on Broadway. And so, you just don't know, because I met this incredible young African-American woman and her colleagues, Shonda Rhimes and Betsy Beers, and Peter Horton directed the pilot of Grey's. And basically what happens is that you do this project, you have no idea what's going to happen to it. And I really did think I would never see any of these people ever again for the rest of my life. And, I'm 63 now. And so what can I tell you? That was a very long time ago. And the reality is that when that happened, we made the first 13 episodes in this vacuum because they hadn't come on the air. And it came on the air, I think the day before our final day of shooting for the first 13 episodes. So we were there in our own little bubble, speaking of bubbles, our own little bubble, thinking, what's going to happen with this show? I had no idea. I'd done about 6 or 7 episodes at that point. And then the next thing we know, that is my experience. I've been in Law and Order. I played, a multitude of parts. I've been 6 or 7 episodes of Law and Order. I'd done other little guest star here, guest star there. Loved
the practice. You were a recurring regularly.
Yeah, I did. Out of the 9 years, I was in about 5 of them. I was also in the pilot of that. I was in the pilot of Veep. I was in the pilot of Grey's Anatomy. And I said, I'm a good luck charm, you guys. I'm a good luck charm as your guest star. So anyway, and all those parts ended up going on to have future. And the only sadness about Veep was that I was at that same time playing the vice president on Scandal. So it was just too hard. I couldn't do both. It was like Sophie's choice. Anyway, so hard. But anyway, yeah. So basically for me at the age of 46, and it probably came on when I was maybe a tiny bit older, and that was the one for me that kind of put me on a different platform. I feel like I arrived like a golden age of television-ish. Women of older than 45 were having really vibrant, interesting roles to play. And God help me, I'm still playing them.
Can we talk a little bit about the fact that Ellis, as you play Meredith's mom, she dies in season 3, but she comes back multiple times, 4 times as like a ghost or in alternate universes on the show. Is it weird to come in and film for a day and have to like walk down a hallway as a ghost in season 15, or is it super fun?
It's super fun because so many of the crew is still there. And of course, my beloved Ellen Pompeo is still there. My daughter, one of my many famous children. I have many famous children. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird when I do the one-off, when I'm just standing there. I mean, it's sort of like, it's like going back to your college reunion or something. It's like I'm standing there in the scrubs. Like I sometimes have to like look at myself in the mirror and go, my God, here I am. I'm Ellis Grey again. And I didn't know, as I say, 17, 18, how many years? Oh,
it's
many years that I met these people, and here I am still doing them. So it's interesting. There was one wonderful, very funny literally like a dab of paint. I call it my dab of paint. A friend of mine calls it my drive-by acting. And there was a thing where Meredith was getting a sort of kind of Lifetime Achievement Award, or the character.
Yeah. And
she's standing in the well and she looks up into the gallery and there's all these people clapping for her and I'm in the middle clapping for her. And, Debbie Allen directed that episode and she's such a goddess. And she is one of those creators, showrunners, directors, amazing actress, choreographer, incredible choreographer. I mean, too much talent with that Debbie Allen.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, love, worship at her shrine. And she works with the extras, she leaves no stone unturned. And, I never had that experience of she's talking to all the extras and like, this is so important. And this is, you have to have so much emotion in your faces. I'm going to be seeing all of you. And there I'm standing there with her. And basically, I'm a glorified extra. And, I thought, God, isn't that thrilling in terms of storytelling? But, so there's my drive-by moments. The weirdest episode of all for me was the alternate reality one. And that's where I had actually a lot to do. And funnily, I had not been on the show at that point for maybe 5 years. I think I'd been in the first 3 seasons, heavy duty, and then kind of went away. And then I started Scandal, and Shonda was seeing me a lot because I was playing my crazy Veep. And she was like, oh, I'm going to put you back in Grey's. I have an idea. So went back to Grey's, and then doing that, not as the Ellis Grey that I had played with the Alzheimer's and memory loss and all the stuff that she was dealing with, but being totally together, running the hospital, in charge chief of staff. That was really challenging, actually, because I realized that Ellis Grey was so in my bones, such an iconic character, and also so, God willing, totally not me, in terms of, just having early onset Alzheimer's. So very fascinating. That was the hardest one to do. And I was very nervous. Oh my God, I was so nervous. And it was so weird because that was my first time back. And again, college reunion. It's like I'm walking through I know these rooms. I remember scenes I've done in every location. So that was really, really wonderful and very challenging.
Okay, Kate, you're one of 6 actors to have been nominated for Tony Awards in 2 different categories in the same season. In fall of 2001, you starred as Hedda Gabler, and in the spring of 2002, you co-starred in The Elephant Man. This is a huge feat, obviously, especially considering that this was right after 9/11, when New York was essentially begging folks to come back to the theater. Mm-hmm. Can you describe that Broadway season and what it meant to you, not just to be nominated twice, which is incredible, but to be an actor rallying with the community on the streets of New York?
It was an unbelievable time. I mean, I'm a professor at USC, and I've talked a lot to my students about that time and this time. And I've said it's really bookend. I mean, hopefully it's a bookend and not a lot on the outside. Yeah. It was an unbelievable time. We were about to go into the theater of the Hedda Gabler when 9/11 happened. So those first days when we were, rehearsing our play were literally 2 days after. So we went back to work on the 9/11, 9/13. And it was an unbelievable experience being on Broadway. It was an unbelievable experience because you would be standing on stage and the audiences were there. That's what's incredible. The audiences were there. You'd be standing on stage. You'd be playing Hedda Gabler, or I would be playing Hedda Gabler, and suddenly you'd hear a siren. And you'd sort of have a moment of, oh, but you have to kind of keep forging along. And, you think about, similar to what we're experiencing now, except we haven't had a chance to step on stage, which has been really hard for me, let me tell you, is, you think about Shakespeare's time. The King Lear was written, during the plague, and what happens when theater has to happen. And there was a wonderful, I remember in the arts section of the New York Times, there was the need to have the power of art to get through grief. And I cut it out, Scotch tape on my dressing table, and I just had it there. And then as, Hedda was like 17 weeks on Broadway, which was our run. This is what we always knew it would be. And about, I would say 6 or 7 weeks before the end, they came to me and said, they, whoever they are. I would say the Van Patten family. So it was like,
we love the Van Patten family.
Oh, I love them. Are you kidding? Joyce Van Patten, worship.
We love her.
She's a dream. I've worked with her so many times. Oh my God. And her wonderful daughter, Talia Balsam.
We love her too.
We love Talia.
Yeah, we did Jake's Women by Neil Simon.
I was just about to say Jake's Women with Alan Alda, of course.
Please, we were together for 2 years. It was the love fest. Worship Alan Alda. Anyway, so it was really intense. And when they came to me, my managers and various representatives, and said, hey, they want to see you for The Elephant Man. Would you? And I said, when does it start? And they said about a month after Hedda closes. And I said, yes, I need to stay here. I need to stay on Broadway if I can stay here. And by the way, I auditioned for Elephant Man. I mean, it was not like an offer. So I went in and I auditioned, and they are all, and I was like, kids, you're just going to put me in this part, aren't you? Anyway, and they did, and I was thrilled. But to be honest, there was an amazing thing that happened, and I know it's recorded, and there's amazing photograph of it at Actors Equity Association in the lounge in New York City, which is when all the Broadway shows came together at Times Square and sang New York, New York, with the cast of The Producers and the cast of 42nd Street and Hedda Gabler, all of us in our little Norwegian 19th century costumes, singing, all of us. I mean, straight plays, comedies, dramas, musicals. We were all in this wedge singing about New York because, that thing happens where everybody thought New York was covered in ash from, point to point, and it wasn't true. But we needed to let people know, no, we're open and you can come see our shows and we're going to tell you stories. And that's that thing of storytelling. What are we doing? What are the stories that we tell during hard times? I know because we're all, in our houses and watching a lot of television, more television I've ever watched in my life. I'm choosing very different things to watch, and some are fluffy and nothing, and some are heavy duty and, everything in between. And so, it was incredible I was blessed to be in 2 unbelievable productions, playing 2 amazing roles. And in a way, it was great to play Mrs. Kendall after Hedda, because Hedda was, Hedda Gabler, she's the lead in the show. And then I got to watch Billy Crudup, play the lead in the show. And this was the exciting thing about being an actor. Not only did I play Mrs. Kendall, but I played a circus performer, and I played a woman in the street, and I played like 4 or 5 other things. So I was a true ensemble member. And that was that I love to do that more than anything in my life as an actor. So, I love to be with a lot of people, telling a story all together. That's my favorite thing as an actor. So it was an unbelievable year. And then, I knew that I was being considered, for the Tony nominations. And it had been an early Sunday evening show. And I was in this sort of Broadway watering hole with that's no longer Angus McKindo, that's no longer there, that I loved. And I was with a really dear friend, and I was in the bar. There was a sort of upstairs part in the bar, and the waiter came to me and said, "You have a telephone call." And I said, "A telephone call?" No, I didn't have a cell phone, I guess, or, I don't know what was happening. I went to the telephone, and my friend, who shall remain nameless, who had some intel, said to me, "You've got them both." And I will never forget that moment of being told that I had 2 Tony nominations, because I'd never had one, so I was getting 2. So it was so thrilling. And I just had that sort of like that little moment that you just take a moment. And I thought, and I couldn't tell anybody except for my family. So, and then the next morning, they announced the nomination. So it was such an incredible thing. And I truly, Nothing, not one single second of it did I take for granted. And then I did another fabulous play a few years later, The Constant Wife, with beloved Lynn Redgrave, who I was inextricably linked with, and we both got nominated, and that was also thrilling. So I feel very blessed.
Something that we were so like pleased to be reminded of as we dug into our research was that you, of course, also do musicals from time to time. Most notably, you were Sarah in the 1995 revival of Company, and also you replaced Christine Estabrook in the original Broadway production of Spring Awakening. Did you grow up loving musicals? Like, was that always part of your plan?
It was never part of my plan, but I always grew up loving musicals. You know, my mother, Sybil Williams Burton Christopher, was a great, amazing lady of the theater. And she, you know, the last 22 years of her life, she was the co-artistic director of the Bay Street Theater in Sag Harbor. So, you know, and my mother's absolute love and passion for the theater was so palpable growing up in New York. I grew up in New York. Hello. So I saw, you know, I went to the opening night of Company with Dean, you know, and Elaine Stritch and Merle Louise. And, you know, I remember it. I remember it vividly. And I would say that I've been blessed in my life because of my showbiz roots, you know, as my early years to go to these, every single great show. I saw all of Sondheim's shows, probably, you know, with the original cast. The only time that I didn't go to the theater in a major way was when I was at Yale School of Drama and college. So 7 years, I was just really ensconced up in southern New England, so I didn't get down there much. But I did come to see Nicholas Nickleby, you know, on a Saturday. But yeah, musicals, you know, I had one of my great experiences of life was having been in Doonesbury, which was a very fun and exhausting show. That was my first musical on Broadway. And I thought, oh, this is what they've been talking about. I've never worked so hard in my life. I've never worked so hard in my life. And musical theater actors work much harder, I don't care what anybody says, than straight play actors. They just do. They just do. It can honestly be said.
Did you ever see Ethel Merman on stage? Or are you too young for that? Like, did your parents ever take you to see an Ethel Merman show?
She like replaced Carol Channing.
She replaced
Hello,
Carol
Dolly.
Channing. I think I saw Carol Channing. So I think that I did not see Ethel Merman. I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. Yes, I realized the other night I was watching this jazz. This is totally changing the subject. I'll come back to the subject, but I was watching the amazing Ken Burns jazz documentary.
Yeah.
And Duke Ellington was being interviewed in a later part of his life. And I was like, I turned to my husband and my son and I went, oh yeah, I went to see Duke Ellington with my father.
Oh my God.
And Dad got up and did a little poem to some little jazz, by the way. And you know what, you know, and this is the thing is, you know, when you grow up with these illuminated parents, I mean, I had a pretty straight ahead kind of childhood living, total New York City kid growing up from New York. But, you know, I was able to kind of go, wow, that was really incredible. But back to musicals, I do love them. You know, I am Welsh. So Welsh people by nature are very musical. And we are a musical nation, to quote Dylan Thomas. And I have a natural singing voice. It's not trained. But I always took singing lessons when I was both undergraduate at Brown and when I was at Yale. Yale did not have a musical theater part of the program, but we all sang. Those of us who could sing sang all the time. You just sang. And that's the thing is I think that if you're an actor who can sing, you have to sing. You have to sing. You have to sing if you can't sing because it's so good for your voice and your projection, you know, your articulation, your breathing. And I've done a lot of Shakespeare as well. And musical theater and Shakespeare is a real good combo. Look at Kevin Kline. I mean, you know, because it gives you so much more vocal power. But the experience of doing Doonesbury was so hard. And, you know, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, we did it out of town, Boston, out of town tryout. Oh my God, nobody told me what that was like. Exhausting. Everybody's sick, hobbling around the stage, changing everything every 10 seconds. Oh my God, I would blow my brains out. But it was an amazing experience. And then Company, to be honest, for me, being in Company on Broadway, directed by Scott Ellis, choreographed by Rob Marshall, with Deborah Monk and Boyd Gaines and Charlotte D'Amboise and Vianne Cox and Danny Burston, LaChanze, Jane Krakowski. I mean, it's endless.
Yes.
This was the first day of rehearsal. Jane Krakowski and I had been in some other place together. We sat next to each other. And she turned to me and she just said, there's no place else I'd rather be right now. And I'm like, yeah, me too. And those rehearsals, the experience of listening to Debbie Monk sing The Ladies Who Lunch, Boyd Gaines, being alive, Anne and Danny getting married today. I mean, every single day. And everything changed for me as an actress in the way I perceived theater from the time I did Company. And then my last story about that is my first performance with the world's greatest opening number besides Tradition from Fiddler. Bobby, Bobby, baby, Bobby, Bobby. You know, I couldn't believe that experience of the collaboration with other actors that I've talked about. And I came off stage after the first number, and I think I had a little minute before I had to go back on stage. And I was like flush, my cheeks were red. And I was standing at the Criterion Center at the Roundabout was quite an experience. And standing by the washer dryer was none other than Mr. Stephen Sondheim, who I had always known he was a friend of my mother's. She loved him. She was at the opening night of West Side Story back in the day. Twice she saw that, first night, second night. And then I went, oh my God, like, oh my God. And he said, it's something, isn't it? And I said, what is it? What is it? Why do I feel this way? I've been in a lot of shows. Why do I feel this way? And he said, being in a musical is a complete collaboration with the audience because it's elevated. It's elevated storytelling. You're singing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's it. Anyway, and so what I'm saying is that moment, from that moment on, all the theater I did after that, not that I compared it to Company, but I just know that Hedda Gabler and the Beauty Queen of Leenan, one of the greatest plays ever written, American Daughter by Wendy Wasserstein, directed by Dan Sullivan, another amazing play. Nicholas Martin, who I worked with like 15 times, my incredible director on Hedda Gabler, and so many other things. Just if it wasn't that sense of utter collaboration and that seismic feeling, then I was like, okay, it's okay. And I did a couple of shows that were not that feeling at all. And I was like, oh man, kill me now.
Right. Not every single
We won't
one.
talk about that. We won't talk about those.
We're going to push those aside.
No. Anyway.
Okay, so Kate, you sort of brought this up, but you're the daughter of two actors, Richard Burton and Sybil Christopher Ney Williams. And after your parents split up, they actually each remarried other actors, artists, essentially.
Yes.
Your father famously married Elizabeth Taylor, of course, and your mother married Jordan Christopher. How did growing up around the glitz of Hollywood, but also the practical day-to-day life of being an actor, influence your desire, or maybe lack thereof, to go into the business?
Major lack thereof. Did not have any desire to go into the family business until I was a senior in college. And that was at the behest of my amazing Russian studies advisor, which was my major at Brown, Abbot Tom Gleason, who said to me, you have this art and you're squashing it down because of your family. You have a gift. And I was like, yeah, but the gift, it's like the gift. The gift. But I said, but it's such a nutty life. I don't want that life. It's such a crazy ass life. And he said, give it a try, for Christ's sake. It was like kind of like, okay. And it wasn't my mom, and it certainly wasn't my dad, because my dad was like, oh no, you're the first person in the family to finish college. So I said, I know, what happened? It's terrible. Anyway, so basically I decided, first baby steps. I said, let me apply to 4 drama programs. Let me see and I knew I had done all this theater at Brown, Juliet, Emily in Our Town. I mean, so many fun. I had so much fun playing with my friends, some of whom are actors, wonderful actors, some of whom are playwrights now, some of whom are directors, some of whom are lawyers. And basically, I just thought, well, I'm not ready. I don't have any I had 2 wonderful acting teachers at Brown, John Amy and Jim Barnhill, and they were so great. And they got little did I know, they kind of prepped me for going to an MFA program. My generation went to an MFA program. That's kind of what, that's what we did. If you wanted to be an actor, you had to do that. It's not so much that way anymore, but it really, really was when I was, and also I hadn't wanted to be an actor. So I applied to Yale, ACT in San Francisco, and NYU. NYU lost my application, by the way, so did not go there. And then I also applied to appease myself and my father and my British roots. I applied to the Central School of Speech and Drama in London. I did get into the other 3 schools. I decided to go to, when I got into Yale. I kind of knew if Yale happened, that would be where I would go. But I did think seriously about Central. But then I was worried because I spoke with an American accent. And I thought, you know what? I'm not I'm American. I'm British origin, but I am American. So, as it turns out, I've played a lot of British roles, a lot of English, a lot of Irish. I've performed in the West End. I've done a tour of Ireland and England. I've worked there in film and television. So I've had sort of like one of everything experiences there, and everyone I've absolutely loved. Very incredible experience working there, and I would love to do it again. But yeah, so I thought, okay, so I got into Yale, and basically Yale was unbelievable for me as a person, as an actress, as a student. I didn't realize how much theater and film were sort of in my blood before I got to Yale, but I didn't even realize theater I kind of knew, but I didn't realize about film and TV until I was sitting on the set of The Practice. And I said, why do I feel so at home here? And Cameron Manheim was like, what are you, crazy? And I said, no, yeah, that's right. I grew up on film sets. But you know what I mean? I was kind of a really down-to-earth kid, and I'm a down-to-earth grown-up, middle-aged lady. I had my summer vacations going to visit my father and Elizabeth, my amazing stepmom, on their various film locations, which went from Hollywood to Croatia to London and I knew it was great. I was like, yeah, this is great, so much fun. But I never thought, oh my God, that I would actually do that. So it took me a while, but it had to be my decision. And that's what I say to everybody who's the child of. I say at the end of the day, the child of gets you in the door. It maybe gets your little foot in the door. But in terms of really getting in there, you have to actually work twice as hard, because you kind of have to keep reminding everybody, like, it's my own voice. It can't be, it's not, I am totally my father's daughter. I am totally my mother's daughter. Just like you two have aspects of both of them, but ultimately you're yourself. And at the end of the day, Amanda Green, who's Adolph Green's daughter, and I have talked about this at great length, just that notion of until you find your own path, there's no point. Because if you're just doing their path or the child of path, there's nothing, it'll only take you so far. And that's the other thing about Scandal, may I quickly mention, is that Mr. Tony Goldwyn,
of course,
who plays the Presidente, and he and I met each other when we were 20, Tony, Kate, 21, at the Williamstown Theater Festival as non-equity actors. And we have been friends ever since. So when Shonda offered me Scandal, I didn't have to audition. So excited. And she said, will you play the vice president? And I was like, yes. And then I said, who's the president? And she said, Tony Goldwyn. And I went, oh, okay. Well, that's it. I mean, you had me, but now you really do, So, because we get it. What us kids have is a kind of a shorthand. And funnily enough, I'm working on projects with both Amanda Green. I have an Amanda Green project that we're working on, which has to do with exactly what we're talking about. And then also I have another thing that I'm working with the charming and amazingly talented children of Mr. Peter O'Toole and Mr. Richard Harris on the British side, Mr. Jared Harris, Miss Kate O'Toole. So we've got a little thing we're working on too. They're both kind of family things. But, I was very taken with Fosse Verdon, and I think that Nicole Fosse, who I don't know very well, but who I'm a huge fan of, did an amazing job in terms of shepherding that project and keeping it real. And I know there are people who knew them very well who were like, I don't know. But for those people who didn't know them, what an incredible story.
Do you think that, like, you and your siblings could ever, like, do you think that if you watched the story of your father, like, would you be able to do that? Like the way that Nicole Fosse was like a producer on that? Siblings, my Elizabeth Taylor sibling. I have many different siblings, but my Elizabeth Taylor department, as I call it, I see them so much. I see them all the time. I also have and that's, so many. I mean, there's so many on all sides of my family, and everybody knows, I'm very, very close to everybody. Stepsisters, half sisters, stepbrothers, real sisters, full sisters, rather. It's too much. It's a gigantic group. I don't know. I think we're very careful. We're very, very careful in stories about Dad and Elizabeth
There have been a few things that have floated, and we've been very, very, I don't know, and with amazing people attached, incredible directors. But I don't know. Have been things that have had nothing to do with us, that have, things like,
I know what would.
I
know what.
We know the one. We know.
Yeah, and where we just go. I mean, and people go, "Have you seen it?" And I'm like, "No. Why would I?" I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
No, thank you. I actually was there for the real thing, so why do I need to watch some kind of C+ version? So it's just an interesting thing. It isn't the biggest thing, though. I feel as my father's daughter, is that he had such a huge, enormous, gigantic life, personally and professionally. And, one of the thrilling things for me always is when my dad is considered, like, he was like on some list the other day, and he was like, 15th greatest actor of all time. And I was like, you know what? How great is that? That man has not been on this planet for like 35 years, 36 years now. I mean, it's incredible that he's remembered. The biggest thing is he's not remembered by people who don't know about the theater and film. He's not remembered the way Elizabeth Taylor is remembered. But she's remembered. She lived a much longer time. And also, one of the greatest things about Elizabeth, besides her extraordinary gift and her amazing career, is what she's done for AIDS funding, AIDS research, AIDS education.
Yeah.
And that's also my charity as well. That's the thing I've worked on the most besides political stuff. And along with her 10 grandchildren, we've gone to Washington a few times and had some incredible experiences, sitting in Jeff Sessions' office. Don't even. 5 years ago. 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Sitting with Senator Jeff Sessions, all of us. We were like, wow. Who could ever imagine that would ever happen? And yet, because of Elizabeth, there we were.
Yeah.
There we were talking to him about AIDS research, AIDS education. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Kate. 1, thank you so much for being so forthcoming about your family. 2, we are moving into the part of the show that is rapid fire. This means that we are going to shove as much as possible before you need to leave us in. We encourage rapid, but it's really rapid for us, so we're all over the place. You can take your time if you'd like to. Okay. Kate, I have to tell you, I grew up watching Big Trouble in Little China with my siblings, and I was very excited to revisit it and introduce Anne to it. And for those that aren't familiar, it's a 1986 martial arts comedy directed by John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell, Kim Cattrall, James Hong, Dennis Dunn, and you as Margot, an up-and-coming journalist. I love this movie, and it was not a hit, but is a huge cult film even till this day.
It came out at the same time as Alien, by the way. That's why.
Oh my gosh.
That is actually why. Go ahead.
But classically trained theater actors, how did you end up in this B movie? And was it fun or completely dumb or both?
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. And I made a lifelong friendship with Kim Cattrall. We did a Broadway show together also with Ian McKellen called Wild Honey.
Yes. That was later on. I'm glad you mentioned that we had it.
Yes, Kim and I. And every time I see her, we're like, where? Yeah, it was an incredible experience. I mean, it was great. And it turned out, this is amazing. I found out years later when I did an episode of Modern Family that I had shot it on the same soundstage that my father had shot his first movie. I did not know that when I was shooting the movie.
That's
so
amazing.
That was at Fox.
My God.
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was incredible. My favorite scene, you did go every day, went into hair and makeup, put on your costume, and then they threw a bucket of water on you. Every day. So with the exception of like 2 days where I got to be dry. But mostly I was just drenched head to foot. And also Kurt Russell. Honestly, if you want, with the greatest leading man that you could work with the first time, it was that guy.
He seems great.
He's an angel.
Okay. Kate, you played Alice in a 1982 production of Alice in Wonderland on Broadway that was then restaged for PBS's Great Performances. What is one tip you could give an actor in their 20s who is tasked with playing a child on stage?
Gosh, that's so, I was told by Eva Le Gallienne, who is a very famous director and a very groundbreaking female director. She said never to worry about playing her as a little girl. Just play the scene. Play the scene, what do you want in the scene? All the things that we talk to young actors about. Play the scene because the words do the work for you. When you have amazing words like Shakespeare or Chekhov, or you have Lewis Carroll, honestly, and it's really true. And she's such an avatar for everybody else. And all the different crazy characters she meets. And that was the biggest thing for me playing the little girl on Broadway. I was 26 when I played her. And then when I did the PBS version, which was with many different people, with the exception of one person, but my dad and Nathan Lane and, Eve,
Arden, Maureen Stapleton,
Kate Ballard,
Dewhurst,
Andre DeShields.
I danced with Andre DeShields. I mean, I danced with Donald O'Connor. Hello. Singing in the Rain.
Yeah.
And that was, again, another look, like the cast of Company, the cast of that, was unbelievable. Jimmy Coco, Colleen Dewhurst. It's too much. So anyway, that was an amazing thing.
Just mentioning Eva Le Gallienne, I'm obsessed with her because she lived somewhat publicly, it seems, as a lesbian.
She did.
So being that I'm a lesbian, we are lesbian enthusiasts, we love Hollywood lesbian lore. Was she open or candid with you about that part of her life or not so much?
She was very proper. She was definitely from another time. I called her you either called her Miss Le Gallienne or you called her Le G. That was it. And I
saw Le G. I love
Le G. And I called her Miss Le Gallienne for quite a while, and she called me Miss Burton always.
Wasn't there a story where your dad knew her and he was like, "Tell Eva I said hi," and you were like, "Oh," because that wasn't what she went by?
She didn't really like him, and she told me that in my callback. She said, "Yes, I've worked with your father. I didn't like him much." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. What are you going to do?" And so that's what you have to deal with. But no, she was amazing. But I did know, because we were the third production of Alice. And I did know that the original Alice was someone that she had a very involved affair with. Her name was Josie. She had a beautiful woman. Oh my God. She was around the same age as I was, when I played it, but Miss Le Gallienne was 82.
This is great. We keep lesbian charts of old Hollywood, so we're going to connect it. We'll
connecting
put
them.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be helpful in that way.
Okay, Kate. So word has it in the 70s, your father, Richard Burton, and Henry Fonda were trying to recruit Warren Beatty and Jon Voight to do an all-male production of Who's a Virginia Wolf. Do you know this? We are obsessed with this piece of trivia.
I don't know that. I did not know that.
It's in an academic book about Virginia Woolf. Who knows if it's actually true.
Wow.
But we want to know, if you were in an all-female production of Virginia Woolf, who would you cast yourself as, and who would you cast to fill out your quartet?
Wow.
All women.
All women.
I would cast Frances McDormand, my Yale pal. Mm-hmm. What would I play? Well, I think she and I would have to play, we'd have to do George and Martha on alternate nights.
I love that. Okay, this is going to be, okay, yeah.
I would cast Julia Garner as Honey, because I think and she's never done theater, and I've been talking to her about it. She's fucking unbelievable. Sorry. Effing unbelievable.
No, please. Please say fuck all the time. We want Kate Burton saying fuck.
And then who would I cast as the young fellow? God, that's hard. That's the hard one. I don't know. But I mean, those are the ones that, these are who feels right for the part.
Okay, I'm into this.
Yes.
If you think of it later, email us, let us know who you want to be Nick.
I totally will.
Okay, Kate, there's a great picture of you as a child that Kevin Daly recently tweeted. You were backstage at MAME with Angela Lansbury, your father, and Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
You look pissed. What was it like?
I know, everybody tells me about this photograph. I've seen this photograph, and I remember being
hilarious.
That child. Yeah.
What was it like being out with your father when he was with Elizabeth Taylor? The two of them together were such tabloid fodder. Was it exciting, exhausting, both?
It was sort of incredible. It was always like all those people charging around. It was fine. It was fine, and I got used to it, but it was sort of a pain in the neck. You'd just be like, oh, okay, already. I was a kid. I was a pretty normal kid. Honestly. So I never thought, oh, isn't this so exciting? That none of us kids ever felt that. I'm the only one of the Elizabeth Taylor department who went into show business and stayed in show business. Michael Wilding, my wonderful stepbrother, he was a beautiful actor, but he didn't love, the sort of biz. And so it's interesting. I've had a few times in my life, because of Ellis Grey, funnily enough, taking everything full circle, where there's been a lot of thronging people, mostly when I go to Brown, if I'm involved in Brown and do stuff at Brown. That's when I really do feel that kind of oh my God, But so I definitely did not, I didn't dislike it, but I just was if I found it, sort of a pain in the neck.
Thank you for taking the time to do this with us today and be so candid.
You're welcome. This was such a pleasure.
We loved having you.
Thank you very much. It was a delight.
The whole interview with Kate Burton was such a thrill. And, you know, she had these great stories and anecdotes. But the thing that I think I was blown away with was just how forthcoming she was about her sort of her pedigree, I guess, you know, that she was willing to talk about Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, and she wasn't like sort of cagey about it. She was just like, yeah, that was my family. That was like my great stepmom. Like, I'm in touch with all of my siblings from all sides of my family. But I really got a kick out of the, like, us not mentioning, but mentioning Liz and Dick starring Lindsay Lohan for Lifetime. Yeah. Like, when it was like, we know the thing, I know the thing, we know the thing.
I remember that movie so well. I watched it live, I think, and then just started it over from the beginning again because I was so taken with it. But of course, there's that great scene with Lindsay Lohan in the sunglasses by the pool where she just says, like, I'm so bored. It's so good. It's
so wild that happened, that they cast Lindsay Lohan as Elizabeth Taylor, and that nobody was like, no.
She was privy to all of it, but also very gracious. I think what's so shocking about it is she is so well adjusted. And I think we're not used to seeing that from kids of Hollywood superstars. I mean, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor are the highest strata of superstars of the last century. Yeah. And like you said, she could talk really sweetly and effortlessly about her relationships with each of her siblings. So very cool. Very smart, very down to earth, but also just very funny about the whole thing. We're going to link in also the picture of her looking super pissed with Elizabeth and her father with Angela Lansbury backstage at MAME. It's so choice. It's just so good. Also, just really great getting that old Hollywood gossip because we had read about Eva Le Gallienne and her sort of semi-open life as a lesbian. But what we didn't know is about her relationship with Josephine Hutchinson, who is the woman that Kate mentioned in the interview. We've since done our research, linked the information that we have about her into the show notes as well. So please check it out. As you know, we consider ourselves like lesbian historians at this point. So being able to link Eva Le Gallienne to Josephine Hutchinson, who knows where we're going to go from here. So, folks, as you know, we've been connecting this week's guest to next week's guest as a little teaser. It's always good to hear from you when you do we basically gave Kate Burton away last week, let's be honest. But when you do know who the guest is going to be based on our clues, please reach out to us. So this week we talked to Kate Burton. Kate Burton was in the 1985 TV miniseries called Evergreen with next week's guest, which is incredible because I think we've actually never had a direct line between two guests. We've never had a direct connection, one. And number two, we didn't talk to either of these guests about this credit. It is a miniseries about a Jewish immigrant. It's like a 4-hour miniseries. It has an incredibly starry cast. It's very good. The only version of it we could find is a very LQ, that's low quality, on YouTube that was difficult to stream. So we didn't talk to either guest about it, but it is the thing that connects this week's to next week's. Let us know if you have any guests because, again, folks, next week's is a motherfucking doozy.
While you're sending us those guesses, please do us the great honor of leaving us a little review. Give us the stars that you think we deserve, hopefully a 4 or 5 stars, and write us a little comment. Let us know what you think, if it's a good thing, you know? Let us know who you want us to interview. We love a actor's name, and we will add them to our long-running spreadsheet. So please do us the great honor of giving us a little love.
And make sure that you're following us on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, you can find us at Damian Bellino and at Rodeman, RODEMANNE. Might know her from is produced by us two folks in front of you, Anne Rodeman and Damian Bellino.
We also want to thank, as always, our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment. That's Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears, and all that editing in here is also by the wonderful Daniel Sears.
And an extra special thanks to Gang. Gang's music underscores each and every one of our episodes. You can stream and download Gang's music on iTunes or wherever you choose to put the headphones into your ears and listen to music. Speaking of being terrible to teachers, in senior year of high school, I had an AP English teacher that I thought was incompetent. She was obsessed with sex, but could never say the word sex. So she loved to bring in ads where we would talk about subliminal advertising. It would be like a pen dipping into a well and created ripples of water. She's like, what does this remind you of? And I'd be like, a penis, a motherfucking dick. Because she wouldn't say the word penis and she wouldn't say sex. She would just get really uncomfortable, but she'd bring it up every...
What class was this for?
It was AP English.
Oh my gosh.
But I thought I would be really clever, and I brought in a teacher's bell, or no, is that a teacher's bell? The one that you tap your hand on?
Yeah, it's at the counter when you need somebody.
Yeah, like at a hotel. Yeah, like at a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought one of those in and I put it in the corner of my desk. And every time I thought I said something that was really witty, I would ding my bell. And it was a 12-person class. And so I really just like punctuated each comment that I thought was good with a ding of the bell. And the class, you know, quote unquote, loved it. And the teacher had no idea what to do. But I menaced her with this bell for an entire year. And I look back on that and I think, you were such an asshole. Like if I had a student that had done that to me, I would have wrung their neck. I can't believe how terrible I was.
Nightmares.
It's really bad.